Installation of sink applied to Kronospan slimline tabletop. Work table. Vacuum cleaner. Template supplied with the sink or multifunction festool template. Edge router with a cutter. Upper spindle mill with a 14mm diameter cutter and a 9mm diameter cutter for laminates. Bar clamps. Manual installation tools. Hammer, screwdriver, measure, pencil. Protective goggles, earplugs, protective gloves. Compact tabletop assembly kit in case of undermounted sink. The professional and correct installation of the sink is very important because a wrongly mounted sink can lead to damage during everyday use. Observe applicable health and safety regulations during assembly. Before commencing work, you should check whether the tabletop is of appropriate dimensions, without mechanical damage or colour defects and differences. If the tabletop is secured with a foil, it should be removed only after assembly. We recommend the sink be assembled with the use of a milling machine and the template delivered with the kit or a festool multifunction template. The video showcases the assembly with the use of the festool template. The tabletop and template should be aligned in the appropriate position, so as the minimum distance from the edge was no less than 40mm. If the sink is to be mounted near the tabletop joint, the distance from the joint should be 150mm minimum. In order to precisely mill the tabletop, use clamps and attach the template on the tabletop. The upper spindle milling machine is ready for use. The 30mm copy ring and 14mm protrusion trimmer are ready. Mill along the template, dividing the entire thickness into 3 passes. Milling should be started with a setting at 1/3 of the entire material thickness. The machine should be moved along the inside edge of the template. The machine should be driven clockwise. Repeat with a setting of up to 2/3 of the tabletop thickness, and then on the entire thickness, moving the cutter below the lower edge of the material. After loosening the clamps and putting the template away, chamfer the upper edge of the cutout hole. For this, using the milling machine with a chamfering cutter at a 45-degree angle with a chamfer depth of 2mm. Again, moving the milling machine clockwise. Afterwards, lightly sand the cutout edge with P180 to P220 sandpaper, taking care not to sand the surface as it can permanently damage the tabletop. Place the sink in the prepared hole and, depending on the model, put a rubber seal around the edge, if it is not integrated into the sink, or strips of elastic sealant. The sink is attached to the tabletop with latches sold by the sink producer, located along the circumference and screwed on with clamps under the tabletop. After finishing work, it's worth cleaning up a bit. Wipe sealant, pencil, marker and glue traces. Installation of an undermounted sink on the Kronospan slimline tabletop. First mark the middle of the hole for the sink and place a template of the appropriate size. Next, drill an 8mm diameter hole, which will be the axis of the cutout circle. Secure the template with tape so as not to damage the tabletop surface by accident. Secure the tabletop on the other side with another plate so as the circle bearing cur-out does not break off in the final stage of milling. Turn the tabletop on its left side and start milling the hole for the sink. Next, chamfer the upper edge of the hole. For this, use the milling machine with a chamfering cutter at a 45-degree angle with a chamfer depth of 2mm. Again, move the milling machine clockwise. Afterwards, lightly sand the cutout edge with P180 to P220 sandpaper, taking care to not sand the surface as it can permanently damage the tabletop. Mark the places where the holes are to be milled, where brass pegs included in the compact tabletop assembly kit are to be placed. Mill holes with 9mm width and 10mm depth. Put in the pegs and use the sealing resin colour matched to the tabletop, including the GABA installation package. Spread the resin easily on the surface next to the edge of the cutout hole. Attach the sink to squeeze out excess resin and align the sink evenly. Tighten the clamps with screws included in the installation package and remove excess resin with a clean cloth. Repeat the same on the right side of the tabletop. After the resin hardens, secure the cutout edge of the tabletop using oil included in the installation kit.